Hi everyone, my name is Philip Scrimshaw. Welcome back to Scrimshaw Photography, and in today's video we're going to be going over what's in my bag, Africa edition. Now I'm going to be traveling to East Africa here in the coming days, and the gear that I'm bringing to East Africa differs a little bit than what I might bring if I was traveling to, say, Southern Africa, and likewise if I was traveling to a place like Yellowstone or the Grand Teton National Park. So today I want to go over all the gear that I'm bringing, what's in my bag, kind of my mindset behind bringing it, and hopefully by bringing all this different gear, I can come away with some really awesome shots. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing I want to go over, obviously, is my camera bag. What is the bag that's carrying all my stuff? So I have the Gura Gear Kiboko 3.0 liter bag. Now, Gura Gear was a brand of camera bags that was created by Andy Biggs. He's a famous American wildlife photographer, and kind of the mindset for him, at least to my understanding, is that he wanted to develop these bags that photographers would be able to use in places like Africa, specifically where there's a lot of luggage restrictions in terms of weight, and that's a huge concern for photographers who go to Africa because you a lot of times are chartering these airlines, or you have to travel very light, and there's weight restrictions for your gear, and as photographers we want to bring every camera, every lens that we can. So this bag was kind of designed specifically for photographers by photographers. So that's kind of what originally attracted it to me. Now, I bought the 30-liter bag, which is the biggest version that they have just because of the gear that I all want to bring. In addition to this, I bought the version that has a little side pocket here. This here is kind of designed for a laptop in mind, and I'll kind of go over a little bit more with the specifics of what type of hardware I'm going to be packing into here, but I really like this, just having an extra little side pocket for a laptop or whatever editing device you want to bring. I feel like is a really important thing to have in a camera backpack. Now, there's also lots of different handles. There's a handle here on the side if you want to lift it from the side. Let's say you're, don't want to have it on your back for whatever reason, even though it's a backpack. Weight can, kind of really feel on your back a little bit, but yeah, so there's a handle here on the side, handle on the front. There's a clip that goes around your stomach to kind of distribute the weight a little bit. Overall, it's a really nice bag. Lots of different pockets. 30 liters is pretty big as far as camera bags go. This is pretty much the biggest that you're going to be able to bring on most airlines. So this is, the camera bag that I wanted to get, and I've had my sights set on it for years, and it's a really good bag. Took it with me to Yellowstone and served me pretty well. So I think it will also serve me admirably in Africa as well. Now, the second most important thing, other than the bag itself, is obviously the camera that is in the camera bag. So first item that we have here is my Sony A1 with my 400mm f2.8 lens. This is, the big guns. This is probably the top of the line Sony combo you can get. And as far as, photography goes, those 400 2.8s, the 600 f4s, that's, you don't get bigger lenses than that. So this is a lens that I've had my eye on for a long time, and I definitely wanted to bring with me on this trip specifically. I got it and took it with me to Yellowstone for the first time and played around with it, and that was kind of the proving ground, so I could just kind of learn how to shoot a big prime lens, because I've never shot one, a prime lens. I've always shot zoom lenses, so having a big prime, it's a little bit of a learning curve, but I feel like it will serve me admirably in East Africa. Kind of the consensus that a lot of people may have is, if you're traveling in, national parks, national reserves, usually you can't off-road. So 400, some people feel, is a little bit lacking, and you could create a whole video about 600 versus 400 and the debate between those two. And I won't quite get into that here, but I'm also going to be traveling to southern Serengeti during this trip, in the Indutu region specifically, and over there you're allowed to off-road. So 400 2.8 is going to be great. I am traveling to some national parks as well, but I feel like the 400 is going to serve me pretty well, just because I'm trying to really shoot wider with my photography and capture more of animals in their environment versus just, straight portrait close-up shots that, a 600mm lens might kind of lean itself better to. But yeah, I think 400 and then shooting at f2.8 is obviously great, because some of the best sightings, particularly with big cats, happen early in the morning, late in the evening. That low light, is just, it's so invaluable. And some of the best sightings and some of the best action happens, super late at night, super early in the morning. And I constantly think about the photos that I have missed because I didn't have 2.8. And so, thinking about that really kind of solidified my choice to get my 400 2.8. So great lens. I'm happy to bring it with me for the first time in Africa and see how it performs. Then the camera body itself that is attached to the 400-2.8 is, of course, the Sony A1. If you're going to go with the big prime, you might as well go with the top of the line camera as well. So the Sony A1 is Sony's flagship camera at 50 megapixels and 30 frames per second. It really, you don't get much better than that. You get the power of resolution mixed with the power of speed, and as a wildlife photographer, that's all you really can ask for. You want that big resolution so you can crop in, especially if sightings are further away. And obviously you want that speed if, you want to capture some action, whether that be a bird in flight, maybe it's a cheetah on a hunt or something. Just having that marriage together is so important, because I've always shot, high resolution cameras in the past, but sometimes when action is happening, I find myself a little bit lacking. So, ponying up the money for the A1 was a little painful, but I think this is going to really pay off for me specifically for this trip. So I'm very excited to have this. And the nice thing about this combo specifically is that in the camera bag itself, I'm able to have the lens and the camera body attached entirely in the camera bag and don't have to worry about detaching or removing it. The 30-liter bag is able to fit that. I believe it's also able to even hold a 600mm f4 lens, not attached to a camera body. I think that's a little bit too big, but yeah, it's a really nice bag for this combo specifically. And I know some people are against having the camera body attached to the lens when they're traveling, just because you're at risk of damaging kind of both. But I don't really want to be worried about removing lenses, attaching them back to bodies, having lens caps everywhere. And if I can avoid taking lenses and camera bodies on and off, I prefer to do that. So I'm not super worried about things getting bumped around too much. But yeah, this is going to be the main combo that I go to for this trip, and hopefully it pays off. Now, setup number 2 here. I personally have never shot with 2 camera bodies and having 2 lenses. I've always only had 1 camera body and 1 lens. And the more I think about it, the more I kind of realize, wow, that was a really dangerous thing to be doing, because, you're traveling so far and you're going all this distance. God forbid something happens to your camera or your lens or something, and then what do? You only had 1 camera, you only had 1 lens. The rest of your trip, you're going to shoot what, on your phone? I mean, you can, but it's always good to have insurance, and the best insurance you can have in terms of wildlife photography is just having a second body with you. So I have the Sony A7R4 here. I know that Sony has the A7R5, which has since come out. Personally, I don't think that there is that much of a difference in terms of the R4 and the R5. They use the same sensor. Much of the technology is pretty similar. A7R5 has some, better AI autofocus, I believe, and I improve video settings as well. But for the most part, they're both 61 megapixel cameras, and they get the job done. So this is my secondary lens. I have the 70-200 attached to it. 70-200 is 2.8 as opposed to the f4 lens. Again, that low light is really important, so having that f2.8 is really nice. But this is kind of my, my high resolution lens. Even though it's only 11 megapixels more than the A1, this is what's really going to be my go-to lens for landscapes, trying to shoot really wide. So capture, animals and their environments. Let's say you go to a place like Amboseli, you have lots of elephants, you want Kilimanjaro in the background. 70-200, awesome lens for that. I'm also going to be visiting Ngorongoro Crater in Tanzania. This is also going to be a really great lens for shooting, kind of wide landscapes of the crater as well. So I'm really excited to take this. I feel like every wildlife photographer should have a 70-200 lens, just to force yourself to, zoom out a little bit and capture those environmental shots. And having it on a big, high-resolution camera like the A7R4 is pretty much the perfect combo. So very excited to take this lens and have it as an official backup as opposed to having to swap lenses all the time. And yeah, I think this will be a really great combo for me as well. Now, one other item I want to bring here is the Sony 1.4x times teleconverter. Now, teleconverters are, controversial a little bit in the photography world. Some people swear by them, think, oh, they're fantastic. They, make every lens bigger and they look just as fine. And other people say, no, the image quality looks like garbage. Throw them in the trash. Don't use them. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle there. So for me, I'm bringing the 1.4x. Most people who use the 2 times teleconverter, and I have as well, have found that it just degrades the image quality a little bit too much. And the extra reach really isn't worth it at that point, even with the bigger prime lenses like your 400s and your 600s. So the 1.4x I'm kind of bringing for the 400 specifically. Again, kind of break in case of emergency. I know I'm saying that phrase a lot, but I don't really plan on using this unless I'm at a sighting that is so far that I feel like I need to stick it on. If I find myself cropping in so much into the image, or the subject is so far that I just have to crop in, a 1,000,000%, I should probably be slapping this on and using it in order to get that extra focal length. Again, it's probably going to perform best for the 400, so if we put a 1.4x on the 400, suddenly you get 560 f4. That's pretty admirable, and I've used it before in certain situations, and I think it's pretty good image quality as well. Won't be using the 200 or the 2 times rather, just because again the image quality has not performed super great in my experience with it. So 1.4x is going to be pretty solid, and also eventually you get to such distances in East Africa specifically where you get kind of that heat distortion, and eventually you try and reach so far in terms of focal length that suddenly the image doesn't look good anyway. So I think 1.4x teleconverter is about as good as you're going to get for East Africa. So that's all the camera gear that I'm going to bring. Now let's kind of go a little bit into the other gear that I'm going to bring in terms of accessories and other items that I feel are really going to add to the overall experience for my time in Africa. So everybody who goes on safari, I believe, needs a good pair of binoculars. So here I have the Vortex Crossfires. They're a 10x50 binoculars. They're not anything super crazy, but again, they're very nice. And binoculars are really important to have just because I think a lot of times people on safari just defer to their driver, their guide to find whatever animals are out there, and they just kind of sit back and kind of sit princess and just let everybody else do the work. And I feel like as a guest, you should also be doing all of the work possible to, look around and see if you see something, because your guide may miss something. And, a binocular pair really comes in handy in terms of that. You might want to ask your guide to stop the vehicle so you can actually look around, because trying to look for things while the guide's driving is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But these are going to be really good. So hopefully in places like Serengeti and Ngorongoro Crater, let's say you're trying to see if there's like a black rhino or something out there, pair of binoculars, just take a quick little peek, see if there's anything. And, it's just a good thing to have. And I know they've served me really well in Yellowstone. Looking for wolves and things. So I'm very excited to bring them out to East Africa and see how they perform out there. So should be a good time. Now, another accessory I feel like everybody is going to need, especially in Africa, something here like a little rocket blower. So places like East Africa can get very dusty, and you're traveling and moving things around, especially in a vehicle. It's very easy for your camera sensors to get dust in them. It's really annoying when you're taking a bunch of pictures and suddenly you're looking back at them and you realize, oh my gosh, there are dust spots everywhere and my camera's filthy and I just need to clean it. So, you take one of these, you take the camera and the lens off, a couple little air blows on the sensor itself, kind of clear it out a little bit, and then you're back to shooting. It's been a really great investment for me, and it's something I'm using all the time in East Africa just because of how dusty it is, and I really cannot travel without at this point. So you take something like this, a nice little sensor cloth, and clean it up a little bit, and really great investment for East Africa. Now, memory cards. Probably the other most important thing that you need to bring besides the camera and the lens itself is the memory cards. You can have something to actually save your photos to. I have a couple different memory cards in my A1. I have one of the big Sony Tough memory cards that you would use, so I can record kind of 4K 60 footage, 4K 20 footage, as well as order to get that 30 frames per second with the Sony A1. So you need to have a specific Sony Tough memory card for that. So I do have that. I also have backups as well. But for the most part, I just kind of have that big, I believe it's like a 960 megabyte or almost a terabyte memory card in the A1. And then for the A7R4, where speed suddenly isn't really that much of a big deal, I kind of have the basic, SanDisk Extreme Pro memory cards. Anything from 256 gigabytes to 512 gigabytes, and I just have a boatload of them just stash away, and on the off chance I run out of space, just slap one of these in, and you're good to go and back and shooting again. But memory cards very important. Obviously the Sony Tough cards are going to cost a little bit more than something like this, but these are can handle the elements in theory a little bit better, and they have better reading and write speeds. So when it comes to downloading the photos at the end of the day, or Looking at them in your device, those read and write speeds can, if they make a difference to you, then great. I personally don't care. I can wait a few extra minutes, but the big thing is to be able to get those 30 frames per second on the A1 if I really need it. And again, in order to shoot, those kind of longer videos, which is something I'm steering myself towards a little bit more, shooting more video. So yeah, great investment. Obviously, if you can get as many memory cards as you have, just have backups to backups to backups. It's always a great thing to have. Now, after the memory cards themselves, the other most important thing to have is some form of backup storage. So you're shooting every day, you have all your photos on your memory cards, and that's great, but your memory cards should not be a permanent storage for you, especially when traveling. God forbid something happens to them, they break, they get corrupted, as memory cards sometimes do. It's just good to back up your photos every day. Almost even after every game drive is something I like to do. You go on morning game drive, you come back, I download all my pictures, back them up, and then same thing after the afternoon game drive as well. So I have a Samsung T7 SSD here. It's a portable SSD, so this is kind of where most of my photo backups go. 2 terabytes is generally enough for a trip like this where you're shooting thousands of photos a day. I think 2 terabytes is probably sufficient. It's a pretty rugged little thing. Small, can fit into the bag. Samsung is a great company for storage, so I have no problems with them. It's a pretty simple USB-C cable that comes with it, so you can back it up to a laptop or another device, and then you can just upload the photos there. So yeah, after I take my photos every day, I immediately back it up to this just to make sure that everything is all set up. So like I said, you need the backups to the backups. So after you take your photos every day, backing it up to that external SSD is always a great thing to do, but I also like to have a physical device as well, where I can kind of look at my photos and kind of, call through them or just look at the photos I took of the day and just have an actual local device that I can kind of view those photos. So for me personally, I have an iPad Pro. This is a 12.9-inch M1 Mac iPad Pro, and it's great. And, some people like to take laptops and do their editing on that. I feel like for the on-the-go traveling, the Lightroom that exists on the iPad Pro is sufficient for me personally, and so I will back up all my photos onto here, and this is a 1 terabyte, so it's usually enough room for me, when all the shooting that I do in the day. So I'll back up all my photos here locally. I'll also have them backed up to the SSD, so I have backups in 2 different places, and again, it's just all about redundancy. Something, I step on the iPad and then, an elephant steps on it for whatever reason. I have a backup in the SSD. Something happens to the SSD, I have all my photos and videos backed up to the iPad. It's just creating redundancy as much as you can. So this kind of goes in that little laptop sleeve in the back of the camera backpack, and yeah, it's a great little device, and I can make a whole video on arguing about the iPad versus a MacBook or a laptop rather for editing, and for traveling, this is light, it gets the job done. I like my iPad, so it's good. So that's about everything that I have in my camera bag for Africa. I'm very excited for this trip, and hopefully with all the gear that I'm bringing, I'll be able to take advantage of it to the fullest, come away with some really great shots. So yeah, I'm very happy with this setup for Africa, and maybe I'll have a little bit different setup for where I'm going in terms of East Africa. This is a really solid setup that I have here, and I'm very excited about it. So thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Again, my name is Philip Scrimshaw. This is Scrimshaw Photography. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment down below if you have any questions about any of the gear that I'm bringing or any of the gear that you have taken before to Africa. So I'd love to hear more from you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next one.